I'm a used car dealer, and this is my guide to buying a used car in Ireland. Now, I know what you're thinking, a used car dealer, but I'm not going to trust him. But this is my genuine, unbiased guide to buying a used car in Ireland based on my 12 or 13 years experience of selling used cars and selling thousands of cars in that time frame. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how you should buy a car or what way you should finance it, different types of car to buy, when you should buy from a dealer and when maybe buying private would be the best option, things to look out for, and a variety of other different things. Like I said, guys, this isn't me trying to sell you a car. This is me giving you my honest opinion from buying a used car. So hopefully you'll take some good value from this. The first thing you have to remember when buying a car, or the first thing you'd want to consider, is what your budget is. There's no point me telling you what your budget is, and there's no set rules as to what your budget should be relative to your income. But what I would say to people is don't put yourself under too much pressure. Circumstances can change, and you don't want to be struggling to make your monthly payments. We don't want that. The last thing we want is people to be under pressure, wanting to hand their car back, or a variety of reasons like that. Also, whether you want to buy your car in cash outright or take out a loan for it. Now again, that depends. If you have the money, if you have 10 grand saved and you want to buy a car for 10 grand, by all means do that. And that suits some people, and some people don't like the fact that they don't like monthly loans or things like that, and that makes total sense for some people. For a lot of people, they don't have 10 or 20 grand saved up, so car finance suits you best. If you are financing a car, I would say do not put yourself again under too much pressure, and keep your monthly payments to around, I would say, 10 to 15% of your monthly income. So for example, if you make €2,000 a month, keep your monthly payments to around €200 or €300 per month. The last thing you want is to have an absolute mortgage as a car loan, so you don't want that. When it comes to car finance as well, obviously we as car dealers supply car finance through one of our banks, and we get a commission from that. But if you can get a better deal elsewhere, for example, some people get really good credit union rates from like Garda credit unions or public sector credit unions, and their rates are like 4 or 5%. If you can avail of that, by all means do. We can give you competitive rates for finance, but that's not the reason I'm doing this video. Go with the option that suits you best, and if you can get a really good deal from a credit union or maybe your own bank or maybe one of our banks, go with that option. Also, when you're factoring in how much driving you're doing as well, if you're doing a huge amount of driving, and I'm talking more than 30 or 40,000 kilometers a year, you also have to factor in depreciation as a real cost of owning a car as well. If you're doing large amounts of driving, 30, 40,000 kilometers a year, the last thing you should be doing is financing a car over a 5-year term. And the reason for that is your car will be depreciating at a much quicker rate than your loan amount will be, going down. So therefore you're going to land yourself in negative equity. So therefore you're going to owe more on your car than your car is going to be worth. So if you're doing a huge amount of driving, what I would say is either buy a cheaper car for cash, or else buy a newer car but finance it over a shorter term. And I know people are saying, oh, I can't afford to finance it over a 2 or 3 year term. If you're doing a lot of driving and you can't afford to finance a car over a 2 or 3 year term, then maybe you'll have to downgrade the type of car that you buy. I know that people might want to hear that, but the last thing you need to do is, if you're doing mad driving, is to finance a car over 5 years. And then all of a sudden in 2 years time, your car's worth 10 grand, but you still owe 18. Then you're in negative equity and you can't change out of it. So don't do that. Also, when you're factoring in your budget for a car as well, don't forget running costs. These two cars here, for example, both are in or around the 20 grand price range, but this is a 5 Series, this is a Nissan Note. This is going to be a lot more costly on a monthly basis or on a yearly basis to run. The maintenance parts are going to cost more, like brake discs, tyres and all that kind of thing as well. This is a 9-year-old premium brand car, so longer term it is going to cost you a bit more in maintenance. Something like this, although not as fancy, will be a lot cheaper to run on a monthly or yearly basis, so factor that one in as well. Although older premium cars are a good option, you have to remember as well, the reason why they're now possibly in budget for a lot of people is because they're pushing on. This is a 9-year-old car, and although it's very clean for a 9-year-old car, you have to remember as well, it's not a new car, and it won't be as, I suppose, reliable and as cheap to run long term as a 3-year-old smaller, less fancy car like that. SUVs like this, a Ford Kuga, a Kodiaq or a Volkswagen Tiguan, these are all the rage these days. Everyone seems to want the crossover type cars with a bit of height. These cars, because they're very popular as well and they're quite expensive to buy new, these do command a premium. The resale values on cars like that can be quite high. So if you're looking for good value cars, an estate car or a saloon car similar size to this will actually be better value. But some people love the Jeeps, they love the bit of height. So that's up to you. Like I said, the SUV cars do command quite a premium. If you're looking for purely practical, spacious, things like that, something like a Golf estate or any type of estate is a very good value-friendly option. But again, it doesn't look as fancy as the Tiguan, I know that. But a 2017 Tiguan is probably going to be about 10 grand more than this one is, and it'll give you similar interior room, and this one will actually have a bigger back seat space and a bigger boot in it as well. Now, should you buy a low mileage car or a high mileage car? Well, obviously in real world terms, or in reality, everyone wants a low mileage car. But sometimes there can be great values to be had on a slightly higher mileage car. Where a slightly higher mileage car for a good price can make sense is, firstly, if you're not doing a huge amount of driving yourself. If you're buying a car that's 5 years old that has fairly high mileage, but you anticipate for the next 3 years that you'll be doing a small amount of driving, chances are then in a couple of years' time, the mileage will have balanced out and it'll be average for its year at that stage. The other time where it's okay to buy a higher mileage car is if you got a really good price in it, basically, and you were buying it outright and you weren't financing it. Where buying a high mileage car doesn't suit is in two occasions where you are doing a huge amount of driving. That's obviously, so then you'll have crazy mileage in it in a year or two, so that would not be a good option. Or if you're financing a car over 5 years, because again it goes to a point in a couple of years time your car will be worth a lot less than you owe on the car, and you want to avoid that situation. So high mileage cars can work, just make sure it suits your personal circumstances. Another factor to consider is what type of fuel type you should go for. Some people, an electric car suits them, a hybrid suits some people, maybe some people are better suited to diesel. And it depends really. A lot of people buy certain types of cars because they've always had them. We get a lot of customers that say, oh, I've always bought diesel, so I should buy diesel. Then you get talking to them and they only do 10,000 kilometers a year. So therefore a diesel wouldn't actually suit them. I find for a lot of people, unless you're doing more than 20,000 kilometers a year, you don't probably need a diesel. If you're doing a lot of shorter drives and a lot of town driving, a petrol is more than fine, particularly if you do less than 15,000 kilometers a year. If you have a facility, what I'd say as well, where you can charge your car, be it from either a hybrid or an electric, if you have one at work in particular, then a hybrid or an electric car can really suit. And if you don't mind plugging in your hybrid car at home every night, and you can just use the normal 3-pin plug at home, then hybrid can make a lot of sense, particularly if you're doing a lot of shorter spins. So just think of how much driving you're doing. There's no point me recommending a diesel car or recommending an electric car. There's different cars to suit a lot of different people. So also just reconsider your driving situation as well, and don't just buy the car just because you've always had petrols or just because you've always had diesels. I briefly mentioned electric cars there, and some people are very much against them. What I will say, and this is the only thing I'll say about electric cars here, electric cars can suit some people. My wife, for an example, has an electric car because it suits her from BIK perspective. So if you can buy one through a company and avail of the tax savings, or if, for example, you have charging points in work, or if you do, again, a lot of shorter spins, or you have access to cheap charging points or anything like that, electric cars can make a lot of sense. But if you are buying one, do buy a used one, as the depreciation from 0 to 2 or 3 years old can be quite strong. Should you buy a car privately or from a dealer? Now I know what you're expecting. You're going to say, oh, only buy from a dealer. But there's certain times that buying privately is completely fine. For example, if your budget is between 3 or 7 grand, or maybe it's a first time driver car, buy privately. You're probably going to get a better deal. Also, if you're buying a smaller car that's low risk of warranty things going wrong, like a 2012 Toyota Yaris, then buying private, especially if you can get it for thousands cheaper than from a dealer, can be a perfectly fine option. Now, if you're buying a slightly more premium car, maybe a BMW, on the private market, that this does carry more of a risk. So if you are buying something like that, I would definitely bring a mechanic on with you and make sure it's really worth your while buying privately. And I'm talking like 3 to 5 grand plus cheaper. Because you have to remember as well, when you're buying privately, a car is not going to be prepped for sale in the same way it will be from a dealer. Chances are if you buy a car, especially a premium brand car, on the private market as well, you're going to have to service it, you might have to do brake discs on it, you might have to fix a small oil leak under the engine, for example, and it's sold as seen as well. So I would say when you're buying privately, the lower risk stuff like the smaller petrols, totally fine. Just be a little bit cautious when you're going for the heavier stuff or premium brand cars. Also remember as well that when you're selling your old car privately, it's not as easy as just putting it up online and the next day the 7 grand lands in your account. You could be waiting a couple of weeks or sometimes a couple of months for your old car to sell. So I suppose the benefit of buying from a dealer is it's all done in the one transaction. But if you are buying straight, or maybe you're buying your first car and you can get a good deal on a private car, then listen, you're the boss. Go whatever option suits you the best. So Your next question probably is, what type of car should I buy? What brand? What car is not going to give me any bother? Well, unfortunately, the spoiler in all this is there's no guarantee that any car will give you no bother. What would generally be seen as the more reliable ones these days, Toyotas that are great, Toyota hybrids are fantastic. Modern BMWs when they've been maintained, contrary to what people say about the older ones, but modern BMWs are also excellent. Volkswagen Group stuff is pretty good too. But whatever car you buy, it's only going to be as good as how much you're going to maintain it. So please do keep your car maintained and serviced regularly as well. Another thing to consider as well is engine size, okay? A lot of people, when they hear certain cars like this one are 1 litre, they're going to say, oh God, that won't be most powerful, that won't be powerful enough at all. I'm going to need something with a bigger engine. You have to remember that modern engines can get a lot more efficiency and a lot more power out of a smaller engine size. This is a 1 litre, but it has 115 brake horsepower. Probably 10 or 15 years ago, you would need a 1.6 engine in order to get the same brake horsepower and the same performance. So don't be afraid of a smaller engine size. Engine sizes are just getting better and more efficient. On the flip side, some cars have a big engine size and that's nothing to be afraid of either. For example, this Toyota Camry is a 2.5 litre petrol hybrid. And I know most people's first question would be, God, that must be very heavy on fuel. But even if you ask ChatGPT, don't take my word for it, these have similar fuel economy than a 2 litre diesel. Toyota hybrid engines are very fuel efficient as well. So that's something to factor in as well. Not all engine sizes are representative of how heavy it's going to be in insurance or how heavy it's going to be in fuel. Now, I've mentioned insurance. This is probably the bit that I can give you the least amount of accurate information, and the reason being insurance is an absolute lottery. Honestly, it's pull a rabbit out of a hat kind of stuff. we've given up people giving people insurance advice or what broker to go for or what company to go for because they make it up as they go along. But in my experience, the best thing to do is to go for perhaps a local broker that you can actually physically ring the phone and get through to, and they will shop around on your behalf, and they usually give you the best prices. But do shop around. Unfortunately, you have to. The price difference and the variations of insurance prices can really vary. Also, when it comes to Japanese import, a lot of people, their question is, can you get insured in them? Yes, you can. We've sold hundreds and hundreds of Japanese import cars. Sometimes they do ask a little bit more information than they would do with an Irish car because they don't have the information on their system, but we've always managed to get our customers find insurance anyway in the end. So don't be afraid of them. The only ones that were issues were the cars that had no immobilizers and that were only sold in the Japanese market in Japan. I've touched on this in so many other videos. Automatic or manual? Which one to go for? Well, to be honest, it's all down to personal preference mainly. A lot of people are a little bit afraid of driving autos, and it's mainly because they're just not used to them. Autos are great if you're doing a lot of driving, or even if you're just doing a lot of kind of shorter spins and don't want to be clutching or whatever like that. What I always say to people when they're a bit nervous about driving an automatic car is there's 2 things you need to remember when you're driving an auto. First thing is don't use your left foot at all. Chop it off, pretend it's not even there. And also remember that the car will never conk out. Once you remember those 2 things, you're pretty much okay. But again, whether you want to buy an auto or whether you want to buy a manual is personal preference, so you just have to decide it yourself. If you're buying particularly a big car or a luxury car in particular, autos are definitely the way to go. Service history, is it important? Well, in short, of course it's important, yes. Some people are obsessed with a car having a main dealer service history, but to be honest, if it's got any type of documented service history, then that's absolutely completely fine. Also, if you're buying privately, I would definitely buy a car with a full service history if you do decide to go private. Timing belts. Make sure as well when you're buying a car that timing belts need to be changed on not only mileage but also on time. So if a car has low mileage but it is 8 or 9 years old, chances are, for example in this Audi, the timing belt will need to be replaced, okay? It's due on time as well. I find a good indication of whether a car has been maintained properly or not, or if a car has been maintained by a good mechanic, is whether the timing belt has been replaced on time. In particular if you're buying a car privately, but even if you're buying a car from a dealer, this is very important. Accident history. If you're buying a car that is a recorded Cat C or Cat D, or it's been wrote off in the UK before, if you're buying one of them, although these cars can be mechanically perfect and it will drive you, from A to B just fine, a lot of them are repaired really well, the resale value on one of these is really bad on a previously damaged car as well. I would say it's roughly around half the price of what a non-damaged one would be. So unless you're getting it really cheap, as in half the price of what a similar non-crashed one would be, don't buy it. It's a bad deal. Which brings me to my next point, picking which dealer to buy a car from if you're going to buy a car from a dealer. Well, the first thing I would note is always do your research first. Have a look at their Google reviews, talk to some people that have bought cars there before as well. If a place has got really bad reviews and a load of real horror stories, I would say avoid them, even if the car is $1,000 cheaper. You have to remember, buying a car is a big investment. And the last thing you want is after being paying 20 grand for a car and you to be left with an absolute massive hole in your pocket and no comeback on it. So do your research, make sure it's from a reputable dealer, make sure they've got good Google reviews, and if you've one of your friends or you know people that have bought cars there before, happy days. The next thing is warranty, and again, not all warranty is created equal. Most warranty, or pretty much all warranty, doesn't cover wear and tear items, so that's kind of across the board. But if you are getting a warranty on a car, I would always ask, is it a dealer warranty or is it an outsourced warranty? Because I find a lot of outsourced warranties would cover a lot less things than the dealer warranties when they look after themselves. Also, you have to remember as well, on an older car, 3 months would be pretty much standard on warranty. But if you're buying a newer car, we would definitely be aiming for a 6 months warranty. And ideally, if it's a more premium brand car, or if it's a very new car, you should be aiming for a 12-month warranty. Finding the deal that's right for you. And what I mean by that is when you're going to crunch the numbers and get the figures right, the only figure that you need to worry about is your cost of change figure. And what I mean by that is how much money you're actually going to have to give the dealer after you factor in your trade-in. Some people get too hung up on how much they're getting for their own car and the trade-in figure, when sometimes it's factored into a price. So for example, if there's one garage that has a car for 30 grand and they're giving you 10 grand for your trade-in, your cost of change is 20 grand. Now, let's say, for example, another dealer is selling a very similar car for 26 grand, but they're only giving you 8 grand for your own car. The second deal is a better deal. Although they're giving you less for your car, your cost of change is 2 grand less. I know this sounds super obvious, but you'd be amazed at how many people are just absolutely obsessed with what they're getting for their own car. If a garage is charging a lot more for their car, they probably have a lot more scope to add a bit onto your trade-in. So the only figure you need to know is how much money I'm going to have to give that dealer. And again, I know that sounds obvious, but don't get caught up in trade-in figures too much. Obviously it's important, but at the end of the day, cost of change is king. How often should you change your car? Some people change their car way too often. In order for it to make financial sense for you, you should not be changing your car less than a year after you bought your car from another dealer. And the reason being is you're going to lose too much money on it, basically. Every time a car is traded into a garage, that garage needs to make their own margin. They have to pay VAT, they have to prep the car again, they have to do a warranty all over again. If you're doing that within a year, you're going to lose too much. Obviously the car will be depreciating, but it will also have to factor in dealer margins too often. So the optimal time to trade your car in is either obviously keep it as long as you want, that's one option, but I would definitely be waiting 2 years before trading in your car. It makes the most financial sense to wait 2 or 3 years before trading in your car, or else you're going to lose too much money on it. And the final point I'm going to make is do your research, ask questions. If you're not sure of anything from a particular car, if you're not sure of the deal, then don't make a decision on the day. As much as we'd absolutely love you to rush into deals because it makes more sense for us, sometimes you should actually have a think about it. I know that sounds counterproductive, dealers don't normally say that kind of thing, but do ask as many questions as you can. You have to remember as well, with ChatGPT, with Google, there is so much information about all different types of cars that are out there. You could even ask ChatGPT these days, what's the best car for me given my circumstances? But do your research first. Once you've your research done, call in, have a look around. Just speaking from my perspective, we're a low pressure sales environment here. We're not going to force you or rush you into buying any particular car. We would love you to buy a car from us. But again, do your research first, have a look around, and decide what car is right for you.